which would flood most of the coastal areas of most of the continents.
And it would flood SF.
Pardon?
It could flood SF.
Yes, everywhere. But of course, that's an extreme case, which is in all likelihood not going to happen. But it's good to keep in mind that 90% of the world's ice is in the Antarctic. And it's a very large continent. It's the 5th largest continent after North and South America, Europe, and Asia. Yeah. Yes.
Me?
Yeah.
Where is the other 10%?
Where is the other what?
10% of the ice.
Well, some of it is at the North Pole, and I've been up there, and there's a lot of ice up there, let me tell you. Greenland, northern Canada, Siberia, yeah.
How much is the North Pole? How much ice does the North Pole have?
Well, a huge amount. But remember, the North Pole, the ice floats around. Remember? When the Nautilus went up to the North Pole, the atomic submarine, it went under the ice shelf, and it surfaced at the North Pole in an opening of the ice. But the North Pole, the ice flows in a circular fashion around the pole. But the Antarctic is solid. The ice there is about a mile thick. Anyway, the studies that we did related to the animals in the South Pole. There are a lot of penguins, as you know. There are many seals, many whales. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
There's leopard seals.
Yep. Yeah, and killer whales. And the killer whales eat the leopard seals, and it's, the food chain. But yeah.
Penguins. Who's that?
That's me.
Oh, it's you?
Those pictures were taken of me in 1956, 57.
So how did you get to the south? How did you get to Antarctica? Did you go on a boat or did you fly down there?
We flew down. The easiest way to get into Antarctica is by air. And in McMurdo Sound, we had a very large landing strip on the ice. Now, the problem with flying into the south high latitudes is that the weather changes very quickly. And the visibility problems are severe. They have a thing called whiteout, where when you have a high wind, it blows the ice crystals in a semicircular fashion, and as a pilot you cannot see anything in front of you, and you have to fly completely by instruments. And that's very risky, and we had quite a few airplane crashes and subsequent deaths. But it still was the only way we could get in, because the sea ice didn't break up until the very narrow span of time between January and February. You see, the seasons are reversed. Our summer here in the northern latitudes is winter in the southern latitudes. And in order to get the supplies in, we would have to use icebreakers to break up the sea ice, which is only 9 feet thick, and then rush the ships in, offload them, and rush them out before the ice came back in. Because if the ice came back in, as I mentioned before, they were stuck there for a year.
And how did you get from the edge of the continent down to the South Pole?
Well, that was along the Axel Heiberg Glacier here. Here we are at McMurdo Sound. New Zealand is down here. We flew in airplanes to McMurdo Sound, where we had a landing strip, a very long landing strip, which would provide it very much like the situation with the space shuttle. Space shuttle comes in without any power, and it has to glide into landing either in the Mojave Desert or Kennedy Space Center. Our planes had to have a very long approach pattern because frequently there would be whiteouts and they couldn't see anything and they had to land completely with instruments. Okay, so we flew in from New Zealand. We went from McMurdo Sound up the Axel Heiberg Glacier right here and up onto the Polar Plateau, which is 5,000 feet high. And then it's as flat as a pancake. It's just like a table. And you can see for miles. And then we went across the Polar Plateau to the South Pole.
Now, what kind of vehicle did you go in? Vehicles, or how did you do
Well,
it?
we had the snowcats, and you'll see the snowcats. There's the snowcat right there. They were manufactured by a company, American company named Tucker, and they were very reliable. We didn't know how reliable they'd be. Now here you see what has happened is this snowcat, which is very heavy, has fallen into a crevasse. Now what's a crevasse? Crevasse is formed when a glacier, mind you, glaciers continue to move. They're constantly moving. Just a second, I'll get to you, okay? Glaciers are a bit like, if you could imagine oatmeal, and oatmeal flowing slowly. Well, glaciers do the same thing. And there's a lot of shear forces involved in the motion in glaciers as they come down from the polar plateau to the ocean and break off icebergs. And these crevasses form, which are defects and differences in the rate of speed of the different parts of the glacier. So you have this defect in the glacier, and then it gets covered over by snow. So you can't see the defect. That's a crevasse. You got it? Crevasse?
And you could fall in there and die?
Yes, because you're walking on a snow bridge, which may or may not be very strong. And if you're in a snowcat, which is very heavy, it falls there. They fall into these crevasses, and you have to pull them out or leave it there. It's a difficult, and if you're in the snowcat when it goes into a crevasse, you're at great risk. At any rate, we had some of our scientists falling into crevasses because the snow bridges were too thin over these defects in the glacier. And this was a major problem in transportation and in ambulation and moving around. Yes, what's on your mind? You had your hand up now for the last 15 minutes. What is it you're...
How big was the landing?
How big was what?
The landing pad where you landed on?
How big was the landing pad?
Well, it was about 2 miles long, dear.
Wow.
So it's as big as San Francisco Airport?
Yeah, I mean, longer than that even. Because you see, our aircraft had to come in on instruments. And because they couldn't see, they had to rely on their instruments, so they would set up a glide pattern and slowly come in very carefully so that they landed in almost like a feather touch.
So now you spent all winter. Why did you spend all winter at the South Pole? That sounds like an awfully long time to spend down there.
It was very important for us to go down the year before because you cannot get into Antarctica except during this little window of opportunity because of the weather. So if we wanted to get an early start to get to the South Pole, we'd have to be there before the ships and the aircraft could come in. Now, then back up a minute. Remember that the day and night at the poles is very different than it is in the median latitudes. We would have 5 months of darkness where we never saw the sun, and then we'd have 5 months of light, and the sun would